Hello, and welcome to 2 Minute Talk Tips. I'm Bill Monroe, and today's tip: empty your pockets before you start speaking. In 2007, one of the most famous product launches ever happened, and that was when Steve Jobs pulled the first iPhone out of his pocket as part of the big reveal. That's probably the only time an iPhone should be in your pocket while you're presenting. The fact of the matter is, you don't need your wallet and your phone and your car keys and 4 thumb drives and change from the newsstand and your building access badge and a spare battery for those days when you're playing a lot of Pokemon Go and sunglasses and a pen and a memo pad and spare socks or, whatever in your pockets while you're presenting. If you wear a lanyard or lots of stuff on your wrists, leave that stuff off too. The problems with all that pocket stuff is that it's noisy. It makes noise as it rattles as you're walking around and speaking. It encourages unconscious fiddling, where, as a nervous habit, you may find yourself sticking your hands in your pockets and tossing your keys around, making sure that stuff is there. It looks lumpy while you're standing up on a stage in front of a whole bunch of folks. It adds these unsightly lumps to your jacket or your pants. It encourages you to put your hands into your pockets to play with that stuff. And it's also easy to get distracted by a vibrating cell phone alert when that goes off in your pocket while you're speaking. What should be in your pockets while you're speaking? Maybe a clicker to advance your slides, although most likely that goes in your hand. Maybe a timer that vibrates to just let you know when you have just 5 minutes left, and you can just feel it when that happens. Maybe there's demo gear in your pocket if you're going to do a big reveal like Steve Jobs did. But if you do that, make sure doing that reveal from your pocket actually makes sense and people can see it, and make sure it goes smoothly. In general, though, empty your pockets. You just don't need that stuff in your pockets while you speak. Stay tuned after the break, because today we're going to talk about preparing your audience for your presentation. In the meantime, are you a fan of Doctor Who, other things geeky, or comic books in general? You may enjoy the Caffeinated Comics podcast featuring John Clark, who was a guest on 2 Minute Talk Tips just a couple weeks ago. On a recent episode released on February 6, 2017, I joined John Clark to talk about the future of the Doctor Who franchise as it's time once again to find a new Doctor. You can find Caffeinated Comics on iTunes, Blogspot, and Facebook. Just search for Caffeinated Comics. Welcome back, and for today's post-tip discussion, let's talk about how to prepare your audience. But first, I want to begin with a story. Imagine it's Tuesday morning, and it's one of those kinds of gloomy days. Maybe it's in the early fall, maybe it's late winter, early spring. The weather isn't exactly bad, but no one really wants to be outside. There was an accident on the highway leading into your office, and many folks are getting in late. You make it in about 9:30, and now it's about 9:45. So you've actually had some time to get settled at your desk, grab some coffee, check for critical email, and you have a meeting at 10 o'clock to present a new plan that's going to help your department and your organization be more efficient. You actually feel pretty good about this plan. You've practiced your presentation. You know how to work your presentation gear. You've proofread your slides at least 5 times, although you did find new errors in your slides each time you proofread them. And how does that even happen? You've done your market research, and you feel that your plan overall is pretty solid. So at 9:55, you go ahead and you head to the conference room. There's about 15 or so people at your meeting or presentation, and you know most of them pretty well. You've been working together for a while. You may not be best friends, but you work fine together. Your plan, though, will impact all of them. So everyone settles down, and you get started. You get through your intro, and then someone looks confused and asks, wait, isn't this the meeting about the outsourcing program? You tell them, no, actually, this is the one about the logistics enhancements. Okay, so you go on, you get to slide 4, and somebody asks where that data is from. And you tell them, only to learn that there is now a new data set available, and the data on your slides is out of date. A few minutes later, you explain how this program is going to impact the shipping team, and someone asks how it will impact the production environment. Well, you don't know because you hadn't thought that it would affect the production environment. So you promise to get back to them. You get to a new section on implementation, and it's a little controversial. One of your closer friends who happens to be in the meeting actually defends your plan, and she gets it almost right, but her defense is based on a slight misunderstanding of your plan. So now you have to go ahead and correct your defender in front of a bunch of people. As this meeting goes on and on and on, you get the sense that the momentum is not in your favor and your confidence starts to falter. Now, how likely do you think it is that your plan is going to be accepted? What could you have done differently to make this meeting go better? Well, you could have prepared and pre-wired your audience. Let's talk first about preparing your audience. One of the first things they taught us in my communications class back at Carroll College, Go Talking Saints, is that communication is that process by which shared meaning is created. At its core, that's what we want to do with our presentations. We want to make sure that the information that we have in our head that we want to share is what the audience receives, is what the audience leaves the room with in their head. We want to work to create that shared meaning. And to create that shared meaning, one thing you have to do is make sure that your audience is actually ready for it. Are the logistics for the meeting clear? Is the facility the right facility? Is food appropriate and in the right place? Some of the basics of setting up a meeting or a presentation or an event. To really make sure they're ready, though, include more guidance for them in the very meeting invite, whether that's an Outlook invite, a Google Calendar invite, a flyer on a post in a corporate office, whatever. Make sure there's some more information there. Apple and Microsoft can send out vague teaser meeting invites that may just have a logo to the press to hint at maybe what they're going to be talking about. But I'm not Tim Cook and I'm not Panos Panay. I can't get people to travel thousands of miles with just an arcane invite, and you probably can't either. So give them the information they need to know that that meeting is going to be a valuable use of their most precious asset, their time. Your invitation to that meeting should include things like the topics you're going to cover, or ideally a detailed agenda. Let that audience be ready for what you're going to talk about. Help them be present in the meeting from the start. Is there anything else you need to know about your audience? Like how they feel about an aspect of your topic? You can ask them that as part of your invite, or even ask them to think about something before they get to the meeting to help them be ready for what you're going to talk about. And that's the very basics of the prep work for a meeting. Now, let's talk about some of the more advanced processes. Pre-wiring. Pre-wiring is a valuable tool that can prepare you for success. I first learned about the term and the concept through the Manager Tools podcast. It's one of my longtime favorites. You can actually find them in iTunes or whatever your favorite podcast aggregator is by just searching for Manager Tools. You can also find them on the web at manager-tools.com. I highly recommend both their Manager Tools and their Career Tools podcast. But at the most basic level, pre-wiring is about meeting with the individuals who will be at your meeting ahead of time to get their support ahead of the actual event. If you're proposing a change, it's helpful to have supporters on your side before the event happens and to understand any obstacles you're likely to encounter during that presentation. You can schedule one-on-one meetings with the individual attendees, or depending on the particular culture in your office environment, maybe it's more of a drop-by conversation in your office. If you're not doing anything like this today, perhaps even a quick hallway chat could help. But really, by meeting with folks who are going to be in your presentation and in your audience ahead of time, you want to know some things like, what are their thoughts? What are their concerns? What questions do they have? Think of this as just part of your regular preparation, just like when you're outlining your presentation, just like when you are starting to build your slides, just like when you're proofreading your slides. It's not just about the content on your side that you are creating. It's also always about the audience. I talk a lot about WBTU. Why bring that up as you're going ahead and authoring things? But one way to enhance your slides and enhance your content and enhance your WBTU is actually to make sure you understand what your audience is going to be concerned with. and what is going to matter to them. So think of this as part of your prep. Another aspect of this is that when you are conducting your presentation, when you are conducting your session and pitching your proposed change, you don't want to be surprised by questions. You want to know ahead of time what questions your audience is likely to ask you. A business presentation is not a school exam. Learning the questions before the test is not cheating. It's responsible prep work. And if they stump you, that's great in the pre-wire. You have time to do the research and either incorporate that response to that question into your presentation itself, or to at least have that information in the back of your head for when the question does actually come up. If they have suggestions on how to improve your plan and you think those are good ideas, that's also great. You can incorporate those suggestions into your plan ahead of time. And then when you start doing your presentation and those suggestions come up, or rather those points that you incorporated come up, thank them during your presentation. Now, those members of your audience also have an additional stake in your success, because it's no longer just your stuff that's being judged by everybody in that room, but also their stuff. And now they want you to succeed even more. Do they have concerns or suggestions that you disagree with? Okay, now is the time to either adjust your plan or to go ahead and research a response. Are there other holes in your plan? Okay, great. Find out early so you can fix them before the big day. The more you find out ahead of time, the better prepared you will be when things actually go live. And when you pre-wire your audience, you position yourself for greater success. So let's go back to that meeting we talked about a little bit earlier. This time, though, we're actually going to start a week early. You set aside time to meet individually with the key stakeholders who are likely to be in that room, instead of just talking to them on that day when the weather is gloomy and traffic was a mess and everybody's late and then has all sorts of questions and makes you feel unprepared. So we're starting this process of talking to this audience about a week before that. You set aside time to meet with those key stakeholders. In one meeting, you find out maybe 4 days before your big presentation that there is new data for that table on slide 4. That's great, because now you can update your data in your slides. And by the way, you find out that this new data actually makes your case even more compelling. And you know about that and you can speak to that now because you pre-wired. Maybe you brief the manager of the production department about your plan and ask how it might impact them. She's not sure, but she does have some further questions. You take those questions, you research the answers, and now you can build those answers into your plan and into your presentation. You explain your proposal to one of your supporters, and he gets it now, better than if he saw the slides for the first time in that meeting. Now you've got somebody else who is in a much better position to support you and to support the cause you are interested in that meeting. As you talk with the manager of another team, you learn he's opposed to the ideas you're bringing forward, and this is the first you've heard of it. You look into it, you look into his objections, and you conclude that, you can't really address their concerns. And even though you can't address those concerns, it's still worth moving forward, and your plan is still going to have a much better overall result for the business, despite the short-term pain another department might feel. Now, when those objections come up in the big meeting, you're not surprised by them. You don't fumble around trying to address them. You're more knowledgeable about what they are and why your plan is still the way to go. And you can state that with confidence. You can also now start that meeting by thanking the folks who helped you and crediting folks who gave you good suggestions, which, as I said before, means that more people in that room have a stake in your success. As folks happen to come up with questions during that session about your proposal, these are questions you've probably heard before. You know what questions are likely to come up, so you can give more intelligent and prepared answers for them. When somebody pushes back about your program, you're prepared for that. You understand that. You're not surprised by it. And when you're not surprised by these things, when you can address them in a calm and articulate manner, you're generally going to be perceived as more confident and better prepared. Now, how successful do you think you're going to be in that meeting? Do you think you've increased the chances that they are actually going to execute your plan? I think you probably have. Of course, no technique is going to guarantee success all the time. By emptying your pockets and preparing and pre-wiring your audience, though, you definitely increase the odds in your favor. So how do you prepare the audience for your presentation? Let me know in the comments on the website at 2minutetalktips.com. Thanks for joining me this week. And as always, don't get best, get better.